Poor guy has sticky notes to remind him of different things, and all of a sudden the only place he had left was on his eyes and on his mouth. And as you can see there, you have norms that are expected in this world, and of course the expectations that you have. And many times we get really concerned, not because of what we need to do, but what expectations are there from us. So what we're going to do this morning, we're going to look at some of those things and how they relate to our spirituality. The first thing I want to talk a little bit about is the pressure that we face from something called inflation. You know, inflation is something bad, okay? It's something affecting all of us. The inflation rate, the average inflation rate in the United States for the past 30 years was about 2.53% per year. Every single year, 2.53%. That's, of course, not including in 2022, it was actually 8%. Okay, so it's quite a bit of inflation. So basically what that's telling us, that if we go back to the year 1995, the dollar that was valued in 1995, $1 is now $2.06. In other words, you need $2.06 for every dollar that you spent back in 1995. That's how it is. So people, they get excited, they get a little bit of a pay raise, and they find out that that pay raise is eaten up by inflation. Another way to look at this is that in 1995, $95 today is, if you had $1 that you kept in 1995, you can buy 47 cents worth today. That's what it is. So basically here is how the value of the dollar has gone over the last 30 years, year by year, steadily down. Here is a little graph of the inflation rate for the last 30 years. As we mentioned what the average was, but notice here, every year it fluctuated, some more, some higher. And of course you can see 2022 way up there, sticking way up as high as you can imagine. And of course, this all depends on which city you live in, actually. So some cities were worse than others. If you look at San Diego's inflation rate actually was 4.23% per year on average over the last 30 years. And we face with the issue of inflation is one thing, but now you have another thing that is facing us as well, and that is housing affordability. Housing affordability is a whole different world than just inflation. In 1995, the median existing home sales was at $114,600. Now, if you adjust this for inflation, the value of the dollar, as we mentioned earlier, that would today actually be $227,826. Okay? But that would be the norm. But if you look at housing affordability, actually the median existing home today is $389,800. Okay, that's not including places like Los Angeles and Toronto and all that other kind of stuff. Okay, we're talking about the average. So you can see here that the median house is actually 58% above inflation. 58% above inflation. And so on one hand, we have this pressure of finances. Inflation is hurting us. And we talk about buying things, you talk about your wages. And has your wages increased accordingly to this? How about housing affordability? Has your wages increased by 58% since 1995 in order to afford a house? See, this is the question. These are the pressures that we face. And now there are additional pressures that we face as well. We have, obviously, financial pressures. The other pressure that we have is keeping up with your neighbors and friends. This is the other problem that we face. Okay, you have a house, and what happens? Your neighbor moves away and buys a better house. Your friends move away and buy a better house, and what happens? You have to move and buy a better house. They buy a new car. Okay, so is your car compatible with your neighborhood. And so that puts pressure. So just understand something. We got inflation dealing with us, housing affordability. You have cars and other things that you have with your neighbors. Dressing, you got to dress according to your neighbors. Okay, they buy new clothes, and what happens? You have to buy new clothes. Okay, you're going to a new year in school, and what do you have to do with a new year in school? You have to change your entire wardrobe. Okay, financially, that puts a lot of pressure on people. Now, with all this financial pressure going on, you see, we have next, the thing that comes in is guilt. Did you know that? You know why we have guilt? We buy these things, we buy the car, we buy all these things, and then we remember a Bible verse. And the Bible verse says, let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as ye have, for he had said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. And so now we're told we should be contentment, and what happens? Now you have a spiritual struggle. Now you have guilt on top of buying those new clothes that you had just for the new event. You know, we're going to a wedding, and you have to have a new dress. You have to have a new something or another to go to this wedding. Okay, and so and then you say we have to be content, and now you have a spiritual struggle. So on top of all that, you have guilt. Can you imagine what we're facing today with all that going on at the same time? And you know, the Bible gives us a warning of these last days. It says here in Luke 21, and take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness, and the third one here, and cares of this life, so that they come upon you unawares. So here you have all these pressures going on, and the day of God comes upon us how? We're not expecting it. Okay. Now, sometimes we think about the coming of Christ, and we think, when is Christ going to come? And we put it off in the future, something of that nature. And I've seen many people, they tell me that they're getting ready for the future. They're getting ready for something. I remember visiting this one brother, and I looked at him. I said, oh, wow, I haven't seen him in a while, and he looked like death warmed up. And I said, what's going on with you? And he says, oh, God's going to do a miracle. He is going to heal me, and we're going to show the world the miracle that God has. And I asked him, well, what happens if he doesn't? Are you ready to die today? Now, what kind of question is this? You know, the person is sick, and you ask him, are you ready to die today? And the guy looked at me, he says, but God's going to heal me. And I said, what if he doesn't? What if he doesn't? What if you die? He says, well, you know. So we had a good chance to talk. He actually had left our church. He used to be a worker. He had left our church, and he resigned from the church under some pretext, but I know it was a sin that drove him out. I happen to have known some information within the family, and so I asked him, have you reconciled? Have you reconciled with your family on some of these issues? Have you reconciled the field that was employed with you? And he said, yes. And so we talked a bit more, and he gave his heart to the Lord, really dedicated his heart to the Lord. And then I said, have you thought about baptism? And he says, yes, I really want to get baptized. And so we arranged for his baptism on Wednesday. I was there on Sunday. We arranged his baptism on Wednesday. I wasn't there. I was leaving that night. That was my last day there. But I arranged another minister who was visiting the area to do the baptism. He did the baptism on Wednesday. He was so sick they couldn't do a baptism normally. They had to inflate a pool in the living room where he was staying at, and there he was baptized. And his son didn't come for the baptism. He said, look, this is ridiculous. He's going to live. God's going to do a miracle. Anyway, Friday he died. You see, so when we're talking here about that they come upon you unawares, this was unawares in a sense because they were expecting a long recovery, and instead he died. But was he ready to die? And thankfully, I believe he was ready to die. So the question here is, these are things to take away from our cares of this life. You know, I was visiting Melbourne, Australia not long ago, earlier this year. And it was in the end of January. And I went to visit somebody's home, And the son was there. I knew the family very well, but the son, I knew him as well. We were there. We just chatted a little bit. We said goodbye, see you next time, and about 4 weeks later, I went for the son's funeral. He died in a car accident. I mean, these our days are numbered. The day comes upon you unaware. So we have unawares is not just the day of Christ's second coming, but unawares could be your last day on earth. And I thought to myself, afterwards, the guy wasn't sick or anything. Normally when somebody's sick, you talk to them about death and dying and are you ready? And I didn't talk to the young man. I mean, he attended our services and everything else. And I did make some appeals and whatnot, but personally to him, I didn't think goodbye means goodbye and see you whenever. You see, and what does the devil do? I know we often preach on some of the other topics, but here, the cares of this life, because that's our topic this morning, is the pressures that society has on the cares of this life. And we think, how can we live comfortably in life? How can we make the best of life? So let's talk a little bit about the struggle that we have as Christians, because the struggle that we have as Christians is not just the idea of trying to survive, but we also have the idea to fulfill the Bible perspective, you see. We need to work. Okay, so let's start with that. We all need to work, okay? The fact is, in 2 Thessalonians, it says, "For even when we were with you, this we commanded you, that if any would not work, neither should he eat." Okay, this is a basic biblical principle. You don't work, you don't eat. It's simple as that, It's not complicated. You need to actually be working. And some of us, especially when we come to America, to America, Canada, Australia, England, some of these countries, we go chasing after the big almighty dollar. We come here, we were impoverished. Some of us came with only our suitcases in our hands, and some came even without the suitcases. Okay, they came with nothing. And they arrive here, and now we got to survive. And so what do? We have to do what? We have to work, and we take this work seriously. And we come here working day and night. I remember one brother telling me when he moved to Canada, he came over here and he began working day and night. He began working day and night. First, he came with the plans to go to missionary school and plans to be in evangelism and everything else. And the missionary school did not materialize, so he went to work. And he began working like a slave day and night. And pretty soon, he didn't even know himself anymore. And he was telling me they were building a brand new house. He was telling me all of this, and he started building a brand new house, and as he was building his house, he tripped somehow and he broke his leg. And he sat there with his leg, now he's there in his house, new house, with his leg sitting up like this, and his wife is telling him, "What an idiot you are. How can you be so stupid to break your leg in the time that we're doing this?" And about a week later, she was doing something, you wouldn't believe it. She tripped and she broke her leg. And they're both sitting there with their legs broken up, looking at each other. And now for the first time in their life, now they have to actually spend time with each other and talk with each other. And they realized, what have we done? What have we done? What have we done with our life? We have messed everything up here. We've been so busy. We lost our family. We lost our children. The children are now doing who knows what. We're over here with nothing, and we were building the church over there. Weekend, and they couldn't come, so we ended up going to California for something, and at the last minute the Canadians decided to come in and help us build. Okay, and I'm there in California. So anyway, I come back from and the man had borrowed my apron, okay, and he had broken my measuring tape or something, had broken something, and he left me a note. He says, "Sorry I broke this thing of yours." He says, "I'll repay you in the earth made new." We had a good laugh. We threw it away and everything else. And a week later, I heard that he had gone over to Europe. He had picked up his kids in Germany, and they drove to Croatia, and the whole family got killed in a car accident. And that was a tragic thing, but something? We get busy working, and I think about this when we were busy working, but thank the Lord that they broke their legs. They broke their legs so that they can have a chance to stop and think about what is of value. And they died. That was it. They were gone. Just like this. And I wished I'd kept a note because I threw it away. It was a nice little happy thing. Funny. It was funny. It was funny. But now they're gone. And literally, it was a prophecy. Yeah, it's in the earth made new. Okay, and I just thank the Lord that they had a chance to do that. If you ever have a chance, you want to read their life story, you can go back in one of the old Youth Messenger magazines if you can find the article called Too Young to Die. And it was based on some of the stories that he shared with us before he passed away. The thing is, we overtake this, and then we ended up working like slaves, working for what? We have so much extra, you see. Now, the Bible does say that we should take care of our families. It says, but if any provide not for his own, and especially for those of his own house, he had denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. Then we take these verses, we look at these verses. It says parents are under obligation to feed and clothe and educate their children. And children are under obligation to serve their parents with cheerful, earnest fidelity. It says feeding, clothing, and educating. This is a responsibility that we have. And kids, okay, so we have this. And we look at these statements and we take this quite seriously, When we bring children into the world, we have an obligation. It says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. So we have this obligation of training and educating our children. It's interesting when it says, train up a child in the way he should go. Solomon did not say, tell the child the way he should go. Did you ever notice that? When it says educate, to train a child, it does not mean telling. Education is not telling. It says here, when he is old, he will not depart from it. I think it goes on and it says that in order to train a child, the parents themselves must go in the way the child should go. And that means we need to be an example to our children. And then we have additional pressures that we have even from the Word of God. To parents is committed the great work of educating and training their children for the future immortal life. Many fathers and mothers seem to think that if they feed and clothe their little ones and educate them according to the standard of the world, they have done their duty. So a lot of parents, they think, okay, we fed our children, we clothed them, we put them in school. We give them a good college education. And then that's it. Okay, we have accomplished our duty. They are too much occupied with business or pleasure to make the education of their children the study of their lives. They do not seek to train them so that they will employ their talents for the honor of their Redeemer. You see, what we have here is that when we're talking about education in the biblical sense, it is educating our children so that they can be useful in the kingdom of God. So basically, when we're looking at all these requirements to clothe, to feed, to educate, it costs money, and pretty soon we start chasing what? We start chasing the almighty dollar, but the problem is you never catch it. You never catch it. You're running after it, you never catch it. The more you make, the more you want, and pretty soon, as you're jumping to catch that dollar, what happens? You end up in that deep pit that the devil has prepared for everyone. So in other words, what we have to look at two things. So on one hand, we have to look at the responsibility that we have towards our children. The other thing is, it says many of these women are the wives of poor men who have not sufficient means to support their increasing families. And I'm at the present time helping them to feed and clothe and educate their children. But notwithstanding their inability to support their offspring, children are brought into the world as fast as possible, but God is not in this kind of doing. I remember somebody telling me one time, they said, what is the church going to do for my children? What is the church going to do for my children? Are you going to educate my children? I told the man, you're not even paying tithe. How do you expect that? This is your job. Look at what it says here. It's your responsibility. We can help in one way, but it's your responsibility to educate and train and to clothe and feed these children. So what we find here is that we have an obligation, and this obligation is putting pressure on us. So we have a moral responsibility for them. On the other hand, we have the other problem that we mentioned earlier, and that's chasing the almighty dollar. And what happens when chasing the almighty dollar, we are never satisfied. A millionaire is interested in what? What is a millionaire interested in? Working on his second million. Okay, that's what he's interested in. You know, a billionaire is interested in what? He wants another billion. Okay, this is the problem with society here. And this is why God gave us a warning. It says, take heed and beware of covetousness. For a man's life consisted not in the abundance of the things which he possessed. You know, life is not on how many things you have. You know, we think of, I need to have. And so we get, we gather more, and finally, you know, you're looking at all your things, all your possessions, you're happy you have all these possessions, and then what happens? You die. Okay, and then what happens when you die? Your family has a big fight. They have a big fight over whatever you have. You know, it was interesting. My grandfather came to the United States. He didn't have a lot. He came here having expectations one way, didn't materialize, and anyway, he retired soon after he came here. He was 65 after a couple years of work. Back then, you retire, that's it, you know, you retire. And my grandma had a car accident. He got some money from a car accident and bought a house. And he was such a man, he was so thrifty, you know. Back in those days, you know, you can have a phone line and you get a phone line, but he didn't want a phone line. He got a 4-party line, okay, so he can pay less. Okay, you have a special ring back in those days to have a phone for you. He had only 30-watt light bulbs in the house, and the only one that's on is where he's at. Nowhere else in the house is allowed to have a light. So he saved up, and he bought another house. By the time, as he got older, he had 7 houses. Okay, he was renting them all out and everything else, you know. And when he died, I wasn't there. I heard the story. All the family got together to divvy up the spoils, you know, to fight for the thing. And the wealthiest want what? They want the most. And they came there for a big fight. And they had a big surprise when they got there. My grandfather owned nothing. Yeah. He had given, he sold the house. Before he died, he sold this house, gave it for, I don't know, he published something. He gave it to the church, different things. And the house that he was living in, before he died, he put it in the name of the church. And that was it. So there was nothing left to fight, and it saved the family. It saved the family. This was really smart, you know. So it's not the abundance of things which he possessed. You know, there's a story in the Bible, a parable. He spake unto them a parable. The ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, what shall I do? Because I have no room whereon to bestow my fruits. And he said, this will I do. I will pull down my barns and build greater. And there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. You know, I remember growing up, and our dream was to have so much fun that we don't have to work anymore. You know, we don't realize that that's not the thing. The whole thing is, you know, you're supposed to be working. You're supposed to be involved in things, you know, instead of just sit back, relax, and do nothing. And that very night, you know, it says, but God said unto him, thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then who shall those things be which thou hast provided? So is he that layeth up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God. You know, I remember Brother Sass, he had retired. He had finally retired from the work. He goes there to Australia, nice place to retire and everything else. And what does he do? I mean, the guy was busy. He was more busy after retirement than before retirement. The only difference was he wasn't getting a paycheck. He was teaching at the missionary school. He was preaching. He was visiting. He was doing all this stuff. He slowed down a bit now. He's, 93 years old. But he's still writing letters. He's still writing emails. He's still doing a lot of stuff. He's still doing things, okay? That means he didn't stop. It didn't say, oh, now I can relax. No, he kept going. And that's really important because this parable teaches us that we have a responsibility. We need to understand something when we talk about worldliness. You know, whenever we talk about worldliness, we usually talk about dress. And it includes dress, by the way. That is included. But you know, sometimes we forget that worldliness involves many other things. In Counsels on Health, it says the cares of this life and the greed for riches eclipse the glory of the eternal world. You know, if you really want to have a life change in your life, if you want to change the direction of your life, you know, some of you young people are thinking of plans, what you're going to do in this world, how you're going to make money, how you're going to do this and that and the other, and all that stuff, okay? I had those same plans too, okay? But if you can have a glimpse of the eternal world, if you can see what's beyond, you know, some of you are going to give all that up and enter the ministry. You know, we have so many need of Bible workers and ministers and all this stuff, and you know, we keep looking at where? Elsewhere. You know, and I'm actually thankful that immigration is becoming more complicated. I'm actually thankful for that. Because, you know, it's so much easier. Oh, let's just get one from another country, bring them over here. Instead of looking at the people that we have here and challenging you that you can give your life to the ministry. But you can't do it when you're covered, when your minds are looking at the glory of this world. The glory of this world, what does it do? It eclipses the glory of the eternal world. And so you're not seeing things. You're not seeing what the better glory is, the thing that is worthwhile to change the direction of your life. You know, in Matthew, Jesus gave another parable. Remember, he sowed the seed, and there was some that received the seed among the thorns. And that is he that heareth the word, and what happens? The cares of this world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he become unfruitful. There are two things here. One is the care of this world. And so the care of this world are the normal things that we have to care for. And they can also choke out the word of God. But the thing that becomes the worst is the deceitfulness of riches. Deceitfulness of riches is not just dealing with people who have money. Okay, we often think, oh, it's those that have money. I have met a lot of poor people that are deceived by riches. They are dreaming of become wealthy. They are making investments that they should never make in order to get rich very quickly. I remember some years ago at the general conference, somebody complained because they had invested $200,000 in a scheme that evaporated. And one of our church members was involved in some of those schemes, and they're asking the church to repay them back. It's like, what was the problem? They were looking at what? They invested $200,000. I know members who are conservative religiously. They think of worldliness as basically dress, okay? And what did? They mortgaged their homes. Because they were promised that in 4 months they would double their money. You know, and they started by the first month. They gave the money, they doubled their money in a couple of months, and they invested more and more. And you don't realize that these schemes are what? They're there to catch you. And finally they borrowed money to do this, and what happens? They lost everything. Okay, what is that? That's called the deceitfulness of riches. So it's not just those who have money and are making lots of money. It includes those who are wishing they had the money and dreaming about the money, what they would do if they had lots of money. I remember in the Spirit of Prophecy, I haven't found it in a while, but I remember reading the testimonies years ago, and there was this lady, she was complaining about how these wealthy people are not giving money to the cause of God. And she said, if I had the money, I would do this and this and this. And then somehow or another, somebody died and she inherited all this money. And she became just like the others. And Sister White wrote her and reminded her of all these things, that you have done exactly now what you were complaining of everybody. Because, you know, we have that song, if I were a millionaire, isn't it? If I were a millionaire, I would give $1 million for Jesus Christ. Is there something like that, some song or something, or a poem, something? I would give $1 million for Christ. You know, it's easy to give $1 million for Christ if you don't have it. You know, it's easy. I would give $1 million for Christ. Okay? And then we have a hard time paying $100 in tithes and offerings. And yet we would give what? $1 million. Why? Because we don't have it. You see, this is the deceitfulness of riches that we're talking about here. It is quite useful in the hands of Satan. And you know, in Counsel on Health, it goes on, Satan has many attractions ready to divert the mind, and the cares of this life and the deceitfulness of riches all combine to choke the seed of truth sown in the heart. And in most cases, it bears no fruit. So what's happening? So the devil is using especially the deceitfulness of riches, and what does it do? It chokes the seed of truth. That's what it does. You know, when Jesus was taken into the wilderness of temptation, among the things it says, again, the devil taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them. He looked at all the glories of this world, and he said unto him, all these things will I give thee if thou wilt fall down and worship me. All these things. Now, how does this apply to us? Okay, so it goes on. And here's an interesting thing here in Testimonies of Ministers. This is really important here. It's going to bring it down to a practical level. Now, the first paragraph here is going to be talking about the future. Okay, so and this is Satan talking, as we saw the paragraph before. If you remember here, the statement, it's the same statement here. It's the same thing. Satan has many attractions, okay? So here's Satan talking. He says, our principal concern is to silence this sect of Sabbath keepers. We must excite popular indignation against them. We will enlist great men and worldly wise men upon our side and induce those in authority to carry out our purposes. Then the Sabbath which I have set up shall be enforced by laws the most severe and exacting. And we refer this many times to this as a future event. But there's preliminary measures. Before this, there's preliminary measures. And what are the preliminary measures? But before proceeding to these extreme measures, we must exert all our wisdom and subtlety to deceive and ensnare those who honor the true Sabbath. We can separate many from Christ by what? Worldliness, lust, and pride. Three things. What are they? Worldliness, lust, and pride. Those are the three things that he's most successful in. They may think themselves safe because they believe the truth. But indulgence of appetite or the lower passions, which will confuse judgment and destroy discrimination, will cause their fall. So here it's appetite and lower passions. Those are the things that will confuse their judgment. Going back to the other thing, because we talked about morality yesterday in the study, discussed a little bit more about morality and things of that nature. Our target here is dealing with worldliness, and specifically the worldliness, not just the worldliness that many of us are actually suffering with. Even those who outwardly look really like great Christians, they may be struggling with this worldliness. And why is worldliness so dangerous? In James 4, verse 4, we read this actually Friday night as well. Ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is what? Enmity with God. Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. And so now, let's take a look at how worldliness manifests itself. This is one way. And here's what the devil continues. This is the gathering of the executive committee of the devil and his cohorts, okay? And here's what it says, go make the possessors of lands and money drunk with the cares of this life. Present the world before them in its most attractive light, that they may lay up their treasure here and fix their attention upon earthly things. So they can be attached to earthly things. And one of the things, even for workers, sometimes we also get attached. And this is why when I read the Bible in Spirit of Prophecy, I find something very important. Elijah. Elijah, before his translation, what did he have to do? To separate from this world, what did he have to do? You remember what Elijah had to do? He had to move from place to place. He had to keep moving. Goes here, then he has to move there, then he has to move there. And I think that's why one of the benefits that the Spirit of Prophecy talks about is of workers moving from one location to another is helpful, because, you're in one place, you get attached to one place, you get attached to your house, you get attached to things. And what happens when you start having to move, you have to detach from some things. Yeah, you have to, when you're moving, you got to look at this very precious thing that you can't take with you. And then if you have to move to another country, that makes it even harder. Okay, but there's this thing of moving from place to place is really beneficial for that reason. So it goes on back to Testimonies and Ministers. We must do our utmost to prevent those who labor in God's cause from obtaining means to use against us. And so, when you are entering the ministry, when you're working for souls, you have need of means. I noticed there in the thing for the plans committee to have something there in Ottawa, some kind of a center there. What does that take to do that? It takes means. I know you guys have this plan for a church there in Montreal. What does that take? We were talking a little bit about how much it takes to be able to build a church there in Montreal or buy a church or something. You're not talking about $1,000, $2,000. You're talking about how many millions do we need? Okay. And so the devil says what? We need to do our utmost to prevent those who labor in God's cause from obtaining what? Means to use against us. Keep the money in our own ranks. The more means they obtain, the more they will injure our kingdom by taking from us our subjects. So the more money gets into the work of God, the more what happens? They're going to injure us. So make them care more for money than for the upbuilding of Christ's kingdom. And the spread of the truth we hate, and we need not fear their influence, for we know that every selfish, covetous person will fall under our power and will finally be separated from God's people. Now, keep them busy, keep them getting money. I remember growing up in California. It's amazing. I remember hundreds, if not thousands, of people who have gone through our church from back in those days. It was mostly from Eastern Europe. They would move to Sacramento, and then soon enough they start making money. As soon as they start making money, guess what? Well, this church is not quite a church for them. They got to find something a little bit more elaborate than this simple little church. And they leave. And one after the other. Why? It was simple for this. It was simple for this. And they lost the kingdom of God. And, the devil is very clear. We don't need to fear these people who are searching after money. They may be church members for a time being. They may be here for a long time. But if that's where their heart is, there's going to be a problem. You see, what we have to understand is that, notice this statement here, let us not be weary in well-doing. When you have a warning, do not be weary in well-doing. Why is the warning there? Why? Because it means it's going to be what? You're going to get weary. You're going to, constantly give. Can we stop asking another offering? Can we stop doing it? Well, you keep always asking for something else, okay? We are weary. That means what? We should not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. As we have therefore opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially unto them who are the household of faith. And I want you to pay attention. This is the context of the next verse. This is verse 9 and 10. This is the context of the next verse. Because here it's talking about weary, not being weary in doing well. Some people say, well, I don't have money. Well, you got time. You got something you can do. There's always something you can do. Not weary in well-doing. And then the very next verse says, be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, but he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. So the context here of sowing is not, well, if you are, we are sowing in well-doing. If you are sowing these things, what does it say? Whatsoever man soweth, that shall he reap. You know, when I was a child, I had, we had a little farm, and for a while there, because it didn't work forever, because, you know, but in the beginning, I would take vegetables, and I would go door to door and sell vegetables. Okay, I'd sell all these vegetables, you know, and my business started doing good. I was in elementary school, okay? So the business started doing good, and I hired a guy. I hired a guy from school to go out with a wagon, and I pushed a wheelbarrow, and he would go with a wagon, and this guy was, until I caught him, he took all the money he made and he went somewhere and spent it all. Then that was it. But I was trying to help him. I said, listen, you know, you guys can do the same thing. I've been to his house, and I said, look, you know, I can give you seeds. You can plant seeds, and you grow them, and you can sell them yourself, and you can have all the money from it. And he says, oh, no, we can't do that. Why not? He says, because we eat all the seeds we get. You see, in order to prosper, what do you need to do? You need to sow. You need to put the seed somewhere. You know, and here it says, whatever you sow, you will reap. What does that mean? To sow means what? Toss it out. Get rid of it. Let it go. You see, so whatever you sow, you also will reap. You can either sow to the Spirit or you can sow to the flesh. If we are just accumulating wealth, what are we doing? If we're just accumulating it, we're sowing to what? To the flesh. That's all it is. Okay? So now, let's look at this in perspective, okay? Because we need to have a perspective on all of this. Let's take a look at it. How do we get to the point where we are sowing for eternity? First of all, Matthew 8:6 says, no man can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. So the first thing is, every one of us have to decide, who are we going to serve? Are you going to serve God, or are you serving the world? That's a choice that you need to make. You need to decide, who am I serving? And that basically comes down to the act. There's one act that we need to do in life, and that's the act of surrender. Surrendering our life to Jesus Christ without reservation. That's what it comes down to. Because, you know, it doesn't mean that you give money for everything either. You look at some things that, you know, you're actually investing. You're responsible to God, and you need to invest wisely. Some places, I've been to places where we have church buildings and they're empty. What does that mean? They shouldn't have built one there, or they should have made plans to do how to maintain that building after one or two people that are there are gone. In other words, to replenish. There should be a work that is involved there. So as an investor, you want to know that when you're investing something, it's going to continue developing. So you have that responsibility. It's not just giving. But one thing is, how do you know what it is? Number one, you serve the Lord Jesus Christ. And in serving the Lord Jesus Christ, what happens? He will guide you in the right direction. The problem is, let's going back to this, when you're trying to serve two masters, what happens? There's a word here. What happens? You become what? If you're double-minded, if you're serving God and trying to serve the world at the same time, what happens? You become unstable in all your ways. So now, how should we value temporal things? Matthew 6:25 again, therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat or what ye shall drink, nor yet for your body what ye shall put on. Is not the life more than meat, and the body than raiment? Now, what does this verse mean? Does this mean that I don't need to think about food at all? I don't go buy food for tomorrow? I don't go to the store and purchase anything? Is that what it means? I think that the next verse is very clear. It says, behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are ye not much better than they? So when you take a look at the birds, does that mean that they do nothing about it? Matter of fact, the birds get up when? Early in the morning to what? To go gather something. They are there to gather things, okay? They are there, they build nests, they do things. I think that when we're looking at this verse, it's not talking about what that we shouldn't be thinking about it, but that we should not be preoccupied with these things. The Father does take care of them, but they're not preoccupied. Another example that Jesus gave in the same chapter there, which of you by taking thought can add 1 cubit unto his stature? So which of us, we can stop and just start thinking, grow. Okay, grow. I mean, children, do they sit there and go, grow? Do they do that? No. They're not preoccupied with it. But they are doing things that what happens? They are what? They are growing. Okay, parents are monitoring them. If a child is not growing, what happens? They run to the doctor. What's going on? My child's not growing. Okay, something's wrong here. Okay, and then it goes on. And why take ye thought for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Again, this means that they are not preoccupied with these things. If we are preoccupied and worrying about so far in the future, things of this nature, wherefore if God so clothe the grass of the field, which today is, and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not much more clothe you, O ye of little faith? If we have faith, then we are not going to be preoccupied. Faith is not built on what you see, but faith is not blind. Okay, faith is not blind. Faith is based on what? On evidences. That means there are things that you have evidence for. So you are planning for the future, but you are not preoccupied with the future. Even as in the work of God, we used to, years ago, it was only about a year before the session, general conference session, that we would start think about where the session should be and what to do with it. And we realized that gets to be very expensive. Yeah, because you don't have time to develop things, and so we've already planned the next session, okay, after this one, okay, but we're not preoccupied with it. We hope that Jesus will come before then. We hope that we don't have to deal with that. But what if we do? We have plans, but we are not preoccupied with those type of things. Therefore, take no thought, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or wherewithal shall we be clothed? For after all these things do the Gentiles seek, for your heavenly Father knoweth that ye have need of all these things. So back in the days of Israel, they basically had to gather the harvest in during the summer. So why? Why did they gather the harvest for the summer? So they have something to eat when? All winter. That was normal practice. But do you prepare for the second winter? Do you prepare for the third winter? Do you prepare, what happens if 10 years from now we have a drought? No. So there is an amount of preparation that is normal, and there is an amount of preparation that becomes preoccupied with it. So what we have to do in this context, still in Matthew 6, we need to prioritize. And it says here, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto that day is the evil thereof. We have enough problems today to deal with for us to start worrying about tomorrow. A lot of diseases today are purely emotional. And the emotional diseases that happen today are diseases of worrying about tomorrow. What's going to happen tomorrow? How am I going to take care of tomorrow? And one of the biggest problems that we face as a church today, in this last few years, when COVID hit, one of the things that really affected us as a church is so many people thinking, how am I going to survive during the time of trouble? And so they want to make sure they find themselves a place far away in the country where they can be of no use to anybody else in society. You know, I remember people that were fleeing to Montana, and fleeing to Montana because there's nobody out there to bother us, and what happens? They can preach only to the elk and to the deer that are out there and the grizzly bears. Our first work is to preach the gospel, to seek and to save that which is lost. And I don't need to worry about tomorrow. I don't need to prepare to go so far out of society that all I can care for is me, myself, and I. That's not the plan of God. The plan of God is that we sacrifice ourselves for humanity. That's the plan that God has. And this is why there's going to be... They're preaching the gospel. And that's what we need to be looking at. Seek first the kingdom of God. What does God want me to do with myself and my family? What does God want me to do with my means in order to hasten the second coming of Christ? Why? Because he that soweth to the flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, but he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. So the question is, what are we doing with the means that God has given to us? What are you doing with your talents? Because means are not just money. Okay, we often think of means as money, but we also think of means as abilities. I was just talking to a person the other day, and they were telling me that on average for the last year, they have dedicated 20 hours per week in doing things for the work of God. 20 hours per week. And we're not paying for any of that. Okay, 20 hours per week is what they were dedicating. And before that, to get certain things going, they were actually doing 40 hours a week. Okay, what is that? So we're talking about means. We're talking about abilities. We're talking about yourself. Some of you need to look at yourself and say, is this the best use that I have of my abilities? Or would a better use be of dedicating my life fully to the cause of God as a missionary? That's another thing we need to seriously think about. It says here, lay up not for yourself treasure upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourself treasure in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through and steal. The determining factor in all of this, people sometimes ask me, what specific things should I need to do? Well, in reality, you need to talk to God, because I can't talk to God for you. Like, I can't do that. Okay? But what I need to tell you, though, is this: where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So my question is, where is your heart? Where is your heart? Is your heart in the coming world, or is your heart in this world? That's the determining factor. And when you look at where is my heart, what are you willing to do? You're willing to do anything. Sometimes people told me, you can't expect qualified people to leave everything behind and live on a worker's salary. Well, it depends where your heart is. Because I can guarantee you one thing. That question is not new. Matter of fact, workers today are getting a lot better than when I started. I mean, when I started, they figured it was torture to give money to a worker. That's what they felt like. I mean, I remember when I was getting about, $700 a month, I remember. And one of the brethren proposed that in order to have more workers, we should cut the salary of all the workers in half. so we can have more workers. And this is an official meeting for all of North America. They gathered together and said, we need to cut the workers' in salary in half. I seconded his motion. I said, I agree with that under one condition. So what's that? I said, that everybody in this room gets the same salary as we do, and all the extra money you're making, put in the work so that we can have more workers. I said, oh, why we can't live on that? I knew one guy was making $10,000 a month. Okay, and he was expecting me to live on $350, okay? And it's like, okay, when he all of a sudden that idea died. I never heard it again. What I'm saying, so back then it was different, but today we all have a reasonable salary. And the thing is this, where's your heart? Where's your heart? And in spite of all of that, I never lacked. I never lacked. When I look at it, I was amazed. And on top of all things, I was interested in the girl in Australia. You know how much money back then it cost for an airfare? I got a cheap airfare from Washington, D.C. to Australia. The cheapest one at that time was $2,400 a month. $2,400 for a flight. And recently I bought one to Australia not long ago for $1,200 return. Okay, and this was really expensive. And it flew actually on Sabbath. And I said, no, I can't fly on Sabbath, so I'll have to get the more expensive one. I prayed to the Lord, and I found one that actually was for $1,800. Okay, and then to bring the girl here after we got married, that was impossible. And I'm praying to the Lord what to do. And one brother came to me, and he says, I know people like you. I mean, what do you mean you know people like me? He said, you'll be starving, you won't say anything. I said, well, that's a little true. He says, well, I know you're getting married, so here's $3,000. $3,000. The Lord provided. The thing is that God will provide. But the question is, where's your heart? Where is your heart? Are you willing to surrender all that to make sure that your treasure and your heart are in the same place? Actually, your treasure and heart will be in the same place. And if it's in this world, that's where it's going to be. So how do you get the heart in the right place? How do you get your heart in the right place? Romans 2:12 says, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. What do we need to do? We need to have a transformation. If you're struggling right now, Lord, that's a tough thing for me. Well, that's normal. Okay, that's a normal struggle. Okay, you need to ask God to transform you, because you can't transform yourself. You can't do that. It's impossible to do that of your own. But God can do it if you are willing. But that willingness includes one thing. That means that you need to acknowledge my transgressions and my sin is ever before me. That means recognizing what you're doing wrong. And it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's this thing or something else. I don't know what you're all struggling with. Everyone's struggling with something. The first step is to acknowledge before God our transgression. In order to receive help from Christ, we must realize our need. The biggest problem that we face is we don't realize our need. So the moment you realize your need, God can help you. It's like with kids, you say, can I help you? Oh, no, I can do this myself. No kids like that? A lot of kids, oh, I can do this. I'm a big boy now. I'm a big girl now. I can do this myself. And then they try it and it doesn't work. And if you try to help them, get away from me. I can do this myself. But after a while, they can't do it, can't lift it. What do? Oh, can you help me? Okay, well, then that we can help them. Okay, well, God's the same thing. God's not going to force His help upon us. So the way you get God helping you, the way you get divine power is recognizing your need. We must have a true knowledge of ourselves. It is only he who knows himself to be a sinner that Christ can save. Only as we see our utter helplessness and renounce all self-trust shall we lay hold on divine power. Basically, what I found is if your goal is to do the best you can, you don't need God. Did you know that? If your goal is the best you can, then you don't need God. You see, you need God when you need to do what? Above what you can. When you need supernatural power to accomplish something, that's when you need God. And so that is recognizing our need. So keep in mind the warning that we had for the last days. This is the verse we had in the beginning. Take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness, and cares of this life, and so that they come upon you unawares. For as a snare shall it come on all of them that dwell on the earth, on the face of the whole earth. You see, God is warning us that we need to protect ourselves. How do you protect yourself? It's quite simple. Watch ye therefore and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. What do we need to do? We need to watch and pray. We need to take time to watch and pray. So going back to this thing at the very beginning, number one, that what we need in order to succeed is to be contented. Let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as ye have. Contentment is the key. And you know, there's something else that needs to be associated with content. It's not contentment enough. Okay, it says, but godliness with contentment is great gain. See, godly contentment, that's a whole different thing. Because, if we're contented with our achievements, that may not be good enough. Okay, we need to go beyond what we are today. That's where godliness comes in. It becomes discontented with you yourself, but contented with Jesus Christ. And why are we to be contented with godliness? For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain that we can carry nothing out. You know, a billionaire dies exactly with the same amount of things as a pauper. Okay, they go into that casket. You may have an embellished casket, but at the end of the day, you're going to be dust. Okay, that's all you are. And so what we understand is that we need to be contented with godliness. And having food and raiment, let us therewith be content. I've been in many situations in life, and all I could say was, I'm not hungry, so I must be doing good. Okay, everything is still fine. So what should we be doing on a daily basis? In order to make sure that we're on the way to the kingdom of heaven, it says, examine yourselves whether ye be in the faith. Prove your own selves. Know ye not your own selves how that Jesus Christ is in you, except ye be reprobate. So brethren, this is a good opportunity as we come to the conclusion of our meeting, is to examine myself. Is there something that you're hanging on to? Is there something that you are discontented with and you want more, but God says no? Well, it's time to surrender your heart to Jesus Christ. Because it's the surrender of the heart, the act of surrender, that changes our perspective on everything. And may God help each one of us that as we go forth from this camp meeting, as this is the last meeting, we have our closing parts, yes, but the last meeting here, I invite each of you to talk to God, so that when you go from here, that you'll be a different person, that you'll be a person prepared for the kingdom of heaven and hasten the coming of the Lord with your means, with yourself. And maybe some of you, I appeal to some of you seriously to change the direction of your life and enter the workforce. Right now, just one more thing here, just right now we have about 25 openings in North America right now for workers. 20 or 25 that we're looking for. And we don't have people to fill them. Why? Because they're looking at other things. And some people that want to be in the work, they're not qualified to be in the work. Okay? They don't work on the qualification part to get themselves ready. But some of you may be prepared to leave your trade behind, leave the plans, the goals that you have, the success that you have, to enter the work of God. It's interesting, when Jesus called the 12 disciples, he didn't call those who were doing nothing. He actually called it. Matthew was doing what? Business was great. Business was good. He was sitting at the seat of custom. When did he call the fishermen? When did he call them? When they caught the biggest catch of their lifetime. And that's who God is calling for. People who are busy, people who are active, people who are successful in life, to say goodbye to the world and enter into the kingdom of heaven. Amen. Amen.
Well, brethren, you heard it. I don't have to make any postscript to this, what you heard. I'd like to just highlight one of the last sentences. It starts in the heart and with a new vision of reality. And this only happens when God opens our eyes. So may God do this work and help us to see eternal realities, that this is transitory and there is something permanent and eternal. So thank you, Brother Peter, for this inspired presentation. We have two musical items. We have a sister who approached me yesterday and who asked to sing a solo. Is she with us here from Montreal? Sister from Montreal? Yes. Oh, yeah, sister, are you ready to sing? Yeah, please come forward. Yeah.
Attention. Pour toi, Rédempteur précieux, c'est la chanson que je vais chanter. Pour toi, Rédempteur précieux, j'entonne un hymne d'amour. Ma voix s'élève vers toi, vers mon Dieu. Car de toi vient le secours. De ma vie, tu suis le coup, ma force de chaque jour, c'est Jésus. Mon Jésus, mon Jésus. Quel ami précieux je trouve en Jésus. Par son sang, il m'a lavé. Par sa mort, il m'a sauvé. De ma vie, il m'a sauvé. Mon Jésus, tu subis mon châtiment pour me donner le salut. Tu prends sur toi mes tourments, oh Jésus. Mon cœur ne désespère plus, mon âme n'est plus abattue. Je suis toujours soutenu par Jésus. Mon Jésus, mon Jésus, quel ami précieux je trouve en Jésus. Par son sang, il m'a lavé. Par sa mort, il m'a sauvé. De sa vie, il m'a donné. Mon Jésus, mon Jésus, mon Jésus, quel ami si précieux je trouve en Jésus. Par sa mort, il m'a sauvé. De sa vie, il m'a sauvé. Mon Jésus.
I'd like to ask you two questions. I didn't give your name. Your name is?
My name is Anifie Etienne.
And the title of the song? What would be the title of this?
Le titre c'est Pour toi.
Somebody can translate?
Est-ce que quelqu'un veut traduire pour lui? Hein? Ouais, Frère Jérôme?
You have a powerful voice, very beautiful voice. We are blessed just to. It's about Jesus, right? The title of the song.
Le titre de la chanson, c'est à propos de Jésus.
Oui.
The title of the song is about Jesus.
Oui.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
À propos de Jésus en tant que notre rédempteur.
It's about Jesus as our creator.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. God bless you. Yeah. We will be privileged with one more special item, and I understand that we have a quartet. Boys, are you ready? Yeah, good.
The noises of the night shall cease, the storm, 1,000 voices, surging harmony. One Master Christ, one Savior King, and brethren all are we. O golden day, the ages crown, aglow with heavenly love. Rare day in prophecies renowned, on to thy zenith move. When earth and heaven with one accord, in full voice unity, shall sing one Master Christ our Lord, and brethren all are we.
Thank you, young men. Well done. Praise the Lord. We welcome you. Brother Eli has some experiences he can share with us about some work done in our church.
Week of prayer.
It's here.
See if we can open it. While I show it, you might note some misspelling. Some in one page here. Don't worry, that's going to be fixed. I just noticed it last night and I asked them to fix. It's not coming for some reason. So while I try to have it there, I'm showing it to encourage the church present here to order it. It's coming a little bit late. It was a project that came a little bit late. We had the idea of having this Children's Week of Prayer. There was a country that was doing it, and while visiting this country, I thought it was interesting, but it was already, we had already passed the first months of this year, and we are rushing, trying to have it ready, and we hope by, thank you, Jacob. So it's something we do not for profit. We always invest some money. It's subsidized by General Conference. So actually we are going to be apparently losing money, but it's not losing because it's an investment in the children. But we don't want to waste too much material. So what we need is the church that are interested, that would like to have it for their children. We need the church to order it before we print them. So as soon as you can, please let us know how many you want so we can print accordingly. So this, it's just the sample here, how it's going to be. So that's where the misspelling is there. Instead of miracles, it's saying miracles of Jesus. But it's going to be talking about the miracles of Jesus. So we try to make it very children-friendly. So they are small, simple stories about the miracles of Jesus with a good amount of illustration. Children, we all like illustration, but children even more. So the wedding miracle. And then you can see there will be some activities for the children, for them to paint, some crosswords, for them to work on it. So we are trying to do the best way for them to learn and enjoy the week of prayer as much as we adults enjoy it. So that's how it's going to be. Just some revising of the grammar here, but the rest is ready. So this week we should be able to be sending to all the units that will be publishing it around the world. And for Canada, GC is going to be printing, so you don't need to worry about printing. You just need to order as many as you need. Except in French, hopefully they'll get it from from France. So maybe they need to talk to the bread in France to let them know how many they will need. So that's how it's going to be, brethren. We think it's really nice for our children. And we are really happy that the Lord has provided, and we have been able to finish it in about 2 months. So it's going to be ready, as I said, by God's grace this week. Now, Brian, talking about the work around the world, there are lots of experience we could share of the work, but I know the brethren are always asking us about the brethren in Ukraine, how the brethren in Ukraine are doing. So I want to tell you that by God's grace, they are doing relatively well as they could in a situation of war as they are having. I have visited them during the war 2 times already, and the brethren that were living the most dangerous place, they were removed from those regions, were taken to the place where it's not so dangerous. And the brethren living in these other regions, they helped them in the beginning. But the brethren there, they are very hardworking, as most places in Europe. So they arrived in these regions, got a little bit of help from the brethren there, but soon they found their jobs and their own house. And it was interesting because since the first time when I went there during the war, I arrived in Chernobyl, and I expect to find, I had heard our brethren had bought a microbus to go and collect our brethren from other regions and bring to that region. So I arrived in the church. I knew the church there. It's 3 or 4 floors, the church. And it's a big property we have there. So I expected to arrive there and find lots of our people living there in the church. And I came, I saw some people living there, but I could see they were not members of our church. Then I asked one of our brothers there, I said, "Brother, where are our brethren? I don't see them here. These people that are here doesn't seem to be from our church." And then he said, "No, brother, our brethren, they go to our home. They are family. So they go to our home. This place here, we are using it to receive people that are not members of our church. So we give them food, we give them medication, whatever they need. They come and we help them here. But our brethren, they stay with us at our home." So that was something really beautiful to see there. And so we just had one brother that I think is still now in a training camp. He was forced to go to that training camp. That was the only incident. The others, the government, the military service, they have accepted the letters they take from the church, saying they are members of the church, and the bylaws of the church saying our members are non-combatant. They have been accepting it for these 3 years. So praise be the Lord for that. And that brother was a special case, but even him there, he's not being forced to work on Sabbath. So on Sabbath, actually, he has been meeting with, he realized there were some other Adventists that were there. So he invited them. He said, since the first Sabbath, he told the people there he would not be working on Sabbath. And then he told these people that were Adventists there, he said, I'm not working tomorrow. I'm going to be having worship. And you are invited to come and join me. And they came. I think three more of them, 3 or 4 more, are meeting with him during the Sabbath. So that was a blessing. We were very concerned, especially that first Sabbath, how things would go. And you might have received the message here. We sent a message throughout the world asking the brethren to pray for him. And the Lord heard the prayers of his people, and he's protecting our brother even in that circumstance there. And of course, when talk about the brethren being well, as I said, as well as you can be in such situation, when they are calling our brethren, once in a while, one of our brothers are called, they have to present themselves 2 days doing health exams and having their names there, saying how they are physically, because anytime the government might decide and say, we cannot respect this letter anymore, you all have to come. So there's this tension. You never know what will happen, what kind of officer you are going to find there, if he's going to accept your letter, or will do like this one did, just send you to that brother, just send you for training camps. But so there's this psychological pressure. We were there in a meeting, we had a worker seminar, and I heard that siren, making noise, and it stays for about 5 minutes. And, that might be less, but for me it seems it was a long time, and throughout the whole city. And I didn't know, but I realized it probably has something to do with the war. And then after the meeting, I asked the one brother, said, brother, what's that noise? What that siren is about? He said, it's saying that there might be a missile approaching, so we should look for a safer place, as safe as possible, to hide ourselves. I didn't ask him, but I was wondering, why didn't we run to find a place then? But the brethren were really nice. They stayed there during the meeting. I was talking. They respectfully stayed there. So that's the situation there. But in other aspects, they are doing well. They have food. They are in their homes. So praise be the Lord for taking care of our brethren there. And now, brethren, if I can tell you quickly here, this picture is of a baptism we had in January. I was in Rwanda, and they had prepared some people for baptism. They knew I was coming. I went to teach at the missionary school, and they prepared these people for this time. And they asked me to perform the baptism, and they want me to baptize all of them. And it was 96 people baptized that day. So it's a beautiful baptism, really nice. And these are the people that were baptized there. We have this white brother here on this side. He lives in France. He's actually from Romania, but he's helping a lot the work there. Also, we have some Romanian brethren really helping the church there. And and the other white one there, that's me, beside him. And but really, really beautiful ceremony there. I was really glad to have this opportunity. That was the biggest number of people baptized one day, so it was something special for me as well. And another thing, Brian, I'll tell you, when COVID came, as you know, this term of General Conferences started in 2019, and COVID started in 2020. We had in mind to reach at least 5 new countries during these 5 years. But we just left Brazil, the session. We are coming back, moving, just doing some urgent trips, and still at the same time working with immigration to go back to, we were living here in Canada, in Abbotsford, planning to move to US. And then we started the process with immigration. As soon as the process was approved in US, just need the stamp from the consulate here in Canada, the US consulate here, then all the consulates were closed. And we couldn't schedule the moving, the interview for the visa to move. And another thing that really concerned us more than that was we had this plan of entering new countries, but now the frontiers started being closed. We could not be traveling much. During these 2 years of COVID, few of us traveled. I did some traveling, some that was really necessary, and even so it was difficult to enter in some countries. Very complicated situation. One time I thought I would have to leave until COVID was over. I thought I would have to leave between Ukraine and Romania, because the Ukrainians, they told I had to leave. The immigration there just gave me a limited time to stay. I had to stay less than I had planned. When I was trying to come back to Romania to get my flight, they didn't want to let me get into Romania. So I said, now I cannot go back to Ukraine. Romania is not letting me enter. I have to live here between these two countries here. And finally, by God's grace, He worked it out and they let me in. But we were thinking, when COVID came, we said, we are going to be in trouble. We had some debts we had to pay at the General Conference. We were not in our best situation financially for some time already. We owed to Sabbath School how much? 1.2 million we were owing, around there. And now COVID comes. We said, there will be a crisis coming here. So I called Brother Gassner. I said, please meet with the finance committee. Tell the brethren we need to cut costs. And I was kind of a little bit in despair. Those moments that even us as ministers, we forget that we are not leading the church. We have someone else taking care of the church. We don't need to worry that much. But I called. I said, please tell the finance committee to cut all the costs possible. Just ask them, please, not to touch in the plans for missionary work. The rest they can cut, and they can start with our salaries, the officers' salaries. 10%. They met. They said we have to cut 10% of the salaries to start with. We'll see how it goes. Then we might have to cut 20, 30. Who knows to where we have to go. And we were ready, if necessary, even to work voluntarily. But they met and they made the first cuts there. And we were waiting to see how things would go. And one thing interesting was we were having now more meetings than ever before, online. Because before we had to travel to go to a place to have meetings. Now the brethren would be calling us to have meetings on the weekends, as usual. Then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Every day we had meetings going on online. So we had to learn quickly how to deal with media. And some weekends we were preaching for 4 or 5 countries at the same weekend. And the brethren, sometimes it was 2 o'clock in the morning for me in Abbotsford. I was in the room, the family is sleeping, I was in my office, and we improvised things there. We are not used to it. At home, I didn't have the equipment to be preaching from home. When we had to record something, we would go to some church studio, but now it had to be at home. So we would put chairs, box on top of chairs, and books on top of the boxes to find the right height to have the cell phone. Sometimes Lazarus was holding the cell phone, depending on the size of the meeting. And 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning preaching, and the brethren would say, the brethren in Austria, Germany, they would mention, say, brother, it's really hard for you. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and you are awake preaching for us. I said, brethren, don't worry. It's not hard. That's the best time, for me, because before I had to travel the whole day and the whole night to arrive there and preach. Now I'm at home. It's 2 o'clock, but once we finish here, when it's 6 in the morning, if I feel like sleeping, I can go to bed and I can sleep. I'm going to be eating the food at home. It's not difficult. So it was really not a hard time for me. It was not. Some of you know how much I like to travel, so avoiding traveling, it was kind of a blessing. But it was not that difficult. The sad part was having so many people dying around the world. But in other sense, it was, in some sense, a blessing as well. Then, brethren, about the finance, I told them to make these cuts. They planned the cuts. But the first quarter came, the report of the first quarter came, and I called Brother Gassner. I said, how is the financial report for this quarter? And for our surprise, he told me, he said, that's the best report we have ever had. We never received so much money at the General Conference as this quarter. So he said, I am not cutting salaries here because there's no need. Right now there's no need. That was the best entrance we have ever had. So the second quarter came, and again I called, how is it now? Because I thought, no, maybe for the first quarter, people are still okay. And he said, this quarter is better than the quarter before. So Brian, to summarize this story, today, by God's grace, and it's not because we have done better. We did some things. The session made some cuts already in 2019, but I don't believe it was because of we were better administration than any other administration. It was God's blessings, God putting his hand because he wants to close the work in this world, and he's working wonders. But so to summarize, we finished the educational center in Roanoke. That is a big building. We were probably half of it when in 2019, because the finishing part was coming. We spent probably more than we had spent before. We finished. We were able to dedicate the educational center without debts, and we paid the debt we had for to the Sabbath school, so we don't owe anything today. And we have some money to manage from now on. General Conference is now considered a health institution, so financially, wise saying. So the Lord has blessed us. And now about the countries, we were thinking, no, we cannot travel, we cannot go to this place. How we are going to reach those 5 countries I had in mind for us to reach, 5 new countries. And as I said, we worked online as we were never working before. The Lord started, the Holy Spirit touching hearts, people going to our websites, contacting us through Facebook and social media in different ways. And the Lord was opening the ways, missionaries finding way to do their work. And instead of reaching 5 countries that I had in mind, we always think too little, right? God has always much more to give us. We have actually, Brian, by now, we have reached already 14 new countries. And there is one more missionary was sent, I think last month or so, to one other country. So by the end of this year, if God so allows us, we probably have entered 15 new countries. These are the new countries we have entered during these last 5 years. So there are 8 here, and there are other 7 here. So the Lord has been working in different ways. It's not many members. In some of these countries here, we have just 2 members. Some like Ivory Coast, I think we had a baptism of 78, the first baptism there. But some others are just a few members here and there. No, not many members. But what I see with that is God placing people in all these countries, in different parts of the world, a few of them. And these few people, once they receive the letter of rain, they will do a marvelous job to give the message to the whole country. So all this tell us Jesus is coming very soon. But can you bear with me just from one more experience? I want to tell you a little bit about this boat here. That's something that I was really impressed with the experience. The original? When it was rust? I'd have it somewhere. I didn't put it here when it came. That was a nice one to show. If you have, find it and we can show the brand. I have the adapter for the phone. So Brandon, the story of this boat here. This boat, it's in the Amazon. We have in this region, the Amazon state, it's a state in the north of Brazil. They have a little bit over 4 million people living in this state. Over 2 million of these 4 million, they live in the capital, that's called Manaus, in the capital city. The other 2 million people, they live beside the Amazon River. They have 63 cities, more or less, 63 cities beside the Amazon River. From these 63, only I think 4 of them can be reached by land. The other 59, you have to go by boat. And in one of these cities beside the river, a brother went there many years ago, and he evangelized that place, and we have there a church in that city. And this brother, he was really missionary-minded, and in the church there, he would always tell the brethren during the Sabbath school, he would tell the brethren about, his expectations, his desire for missionary work and encouraging the church to do missionary work. And he said, my dream is that one day we are going to have a boat big enough for us to travel to evangelize all the cities beside the Amazon River. And it can be a trip of 9-10 hours, depend where you are, where you go. So you cannot go with a very small boat. And there were 3 brothers, they were children, 3 boys, growing up in the church and listening to this brother always saying that this was his dream. And they grew up now, they are already young men working, and they never forgot the dream of that brother. And nowadays, the 3 brothers, they work fixing boats. That's the work they do. Naval job, fixing boats. And they did a job for one of the city halls in the region, and the city hall had to pay them a good amount of money. But they knew that this city owned a boat that had sunk in the Amazon River some years ago, and they never removed it from the river. It's government, they don't care much, just buy a new one. It's easier for them than be dealing with these things. So they came to the city and they said, that money you have to pay us, we have a proposal. Instead of paying us the money you owe us, why don't you give us the boat that sank in the river, and we'll take care of it. We are going to remove it from the river, and that's enough. You don't have to pay us anything else. And they had prayed about it and asked God, if the city accepts our proposal, we are going to donate it to the church to fulfill that dream of our brother to evangelize these cities in the Amazon. So they made a proposal and the city accepted it. And they rented equipment to remove the mud that was inside, to remove all the things that accumulated there. And they removed this boat. That was the boat when they removed it. That's how it was. And ugly, but very valuable still. When they removed it like that, brethren, as it is, a company came and offered them and told them, we buy it from you. We pay you $250,000 for the boat as it is. Yeah, because it's big. I'll tell you how big it is. It might not appear how big it is, but it's really big. And that's how it is now that he has the other pictures. That's how the boat is now. They restored it themselves. They have been working. To remove it from the bottom of the river, they worked 35 days to remove it. And after renting all the equipment they needed to remove it. So these people came and told them, we give you $250,000. And they'll tell you, $250,000 here might sound like a good amount of money already. But they 3 could retire and they didn't need to work anymore. But they told the company, they said, it's not ours. How come it's not yours? No, we gave it away. It belongs to our church. So praise be the Lord for their touching their hearts for that. So, Brian, they worked, and there's some interesting stories about the removal of the boat. It seems it's easy, just 35 days of work, and they got it out. But one of them almost died. He was working down there, 15 meters down, in the bottom of the river, inside of the boat, because they had to put equipment to remove the mud and prepare it. And the tube of the oxygen container came out, and he tried to put it back, and he couldn't fit it back anymore. So he had to find his way out of the boat and go up 15 meters. Thank God they are used with it. They have some experience with the river, but he barely made it. He almost died. But God protected him, brought him back there. And another interesting thing, when they were cleaning the boat down there, they came to a room, and they don't know what happened, but it seems that one crocodile entered in that room when he was probably a little bit smaller and made of it his home, and somehow the crocodile grew too big and could not come out of it anymore. So he was living there, just probably feeding himself of fish that would be passing by, and so he couldn't come out. So, and they asked, the brethren, unfortunately, couldn't save the crocodile. They had to let the machine that was sucking the things, the mud there, suck the crocodile as well. But they have so many crocodiles there. For us, we feel sorry for the crocodile, but they have so many, they don't care much about crocodiles there. Oh yeah, they have piranhas there, but it's not that much. They have a certain place you can find them, but they are not all over. Yeah. So the North Brazilian Union has been working. We are helping this brethren there, giving them some financial assistance to finish the boat. Now when we were there, we had the first mission. This boat was already used for the first mission. Lazar and I had the opportunity to be there with them. And it was almost ready. They had some suites inside. As I said, it's really big, brethren. It can carry actually probably 2 big trucks inside of it. And for church, the way it actually just appears 2 floors there, but actually it has 3 floors, because in the big space there in the middle, in the back, there's some stairs that go up there, and there's a place there, it's a 2nd floor. They can fit there 300 people as church. They can prepare a church for 300 people sitting in this boat there. And the part on top is where the suites are. They have washroom and rooms for people to sleep. And they have quite a good number of washrooms down also. Yeah, so the Lord has blessed us. We have this boat there. General Conference also sent a little bit of help now in the end to finish the work there. But for you to have an idea, this small boat that is beside this boat, we went in that small boat. From where we were, they took us with that small boat. And it took about 50 people in that small one. Sound equipment, and lots of food to donate for the people that would be coming for the mission, the visitors. So then you can have an idea how big, because that looks very small, because it's beside that one that is really, really big there. So it's a blessing. And what they'll be doing then, they have this boat stationed in one place, they do the missions, they start the work, they leave a missionary working there in that city, and they move to the next city, and that's what they will be doing. And they have a plan that if they really do it, some of you might be interested, during the summer months, they will take a break of the missions, and they are going to make of this a tourist boat where people can go and visit this place in the Amazon, and be sleeping in the suites they are going to have there. So it's a nice trip if anyone wants some relaxations, wants to know the Amazon. If they really do it, it will be a nice way to go there. And they'll do it to raise money to use for the rest of the year to support the missions they will be doing there. So yes, but this boat now belongs to the church there. Yeah. So, yeah, these are some pictures of that was me preaching there in the boat. I had never preached inside a boat, so it was really nice. I was thinking about Jesus, once a while preach inside the boat, and I had this privilege. It was something special for me. I had preached already in the back of trucks in some place, but boat was the first time, so I really enjoyed it. So that's it, brethren. So please pray for this project there, for the brethren there. They are going to dedicate. They were finished the last details on the cabin for the pilot. It was very rusty yet when I was there in the cabin. Just a few details, and by God's grace, now in October, they will have everything ready. They are already using it, but they'll finish these details to dedicate it to God when it's really ready and looking good. So pray for them, and thank you for your attention. God bless, and I hope it encourages all of us to do something else and do some missionary work. Continue doing the good missionary work and helping the church as you have been doing till now. God bless. Bye-bye.